Workplace violence has changed. Has your prevention plan changed too? Look, one of the ways that we've always approached workplace violence is, there are 4 source types of workplace violence, and, most people think about disgruntled current or former employees. Maybe they think about patients or customers. Maybe they think about the person that breaks into a business or conducts an armed robbery, or they even think about domestic violence. But that's not really the case anymore. It really has changed, and I'm going to cite some examples for you really quickly. Last night's episode at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the guy that perpetrated the workplace violence there, he didn't know any of these people, but he bared a grievance and acted upon that grievance. Now there's a second component. He was really smart. This guy went to Caltech. So he was a very, very intelligent man, and he actually plotted and planned this attack out. He also traveled across country in order to do this. But he's not the first one. You guys remember the insurance executive shooting? The shooter in that case also was very, very smart. He carried a personal grievance, was unknown completely to any of these people. He also traveled cross country, and he also carried out a plan that he spent a lot of time working up. He wasn't alone on that either. The guy that went and shot students at Tufts and also the MIT professor, he too traveled a great distance. He also planned it out thoroughly, and then he actually executed his plan, and he too was very smart. He was a guy that went to Tufts himself. Do we see a pattern here? And there's one more component that makes it even more difficult to prevent. These guys do not have criminal records. They're able to purchase weapons legally. They can pass any background check because they don't have criminal cases. So they're not showing up on the radar beforehand. All we have to do is look at these to realize that things are different. And a large part of that is because our society is now grievance driven. Yes, we have political violence, but that political violence is grievance driven. As a matter of fact, when Marjorie Taylor Greene pulled back from all of that, she talked about the threats to her own son and how this has become normalized. Now, not everybody's in politics, but you don't have to be, because that translates to someone who has a grievance towards your business or your industry. Remember the healthcare executive shooting, the shooter was not connected to that company. He did have a grievance regarding health care, but he was not specifically involved with this entity. So we have to actually take our workplace violence prevention playbook and throw it out the window. We need to reconfigure and rework our plans so that we focus on keeping everyone safe in this type of environment and from these types of risks. The fastest way to know if your workplace violence prevention plan is on the right track is to have a simple conversation with someone that does this work all of the time. I'm offering a free 15-minute risk audit consultation. There's absolutely no obligation. All you have to do is click on the link below, set up some time, and we'll go over where you're at in your plan. I'll look at, are you on track, or are there areas that you can improve? And I'll even bring up the 3 areas that I think will need your most focus. And whether or not you choose to work with me, that's okay. I want to make sure that you are going in the right direction. So one of the first things to talk about here is, let's use the correspondence dinner. We now know that this person had a manifesto, and obviously a person who has a manifesto is carrying a grievance. We know that he traveled from Torrance, California. We know that he legally purchased his weapons. We know that he plotted this out to a point of getting his hotel room in the same hotel where this event was going to take place. And here's the thing. He was fully aware of all of the security, the presidential security detail, the Secret Service was there, the police were there, the FBI was there. This place was packed with law enforcement and with security. And yet he managed to burst right through the check-in area and start shooting. Thankfully, he didn't harm anyone, but the bottom line is this notion that you can control access to your workplace is flat out not accurate. Yes, there are things that you can do to make it more difficult, but in the end, where there's a will, there's a way, and if this person wants to come in, they can do it. So you need to start thinking about not hardening the targets, but about making it more difficult, and doing so in a way that forces a person who wants to engage in this type of action to reveal himself earlier. That's what was missing here. Yes, they conducted simple background checks of the hotel guests, but they were not watching what was going on here. They were busy doing their security check-in. They were busy doing their perimeter checks. They were busy checking in with the president and his wife, checking in with the members of Congress and the administration that were there. But they were not doing the one thing they really needed to do, which is to watch everyone and look for someone that is doing things a little differently. Because basically this guy was able to charge through and get off several rounds before he was engaged. That should not have happened. That wasn't a security issue though. Like I said, there was plenty of security. What it was a paying attention situation. And by the way, for your workplace, don't think cameras can do that for you. Cameras have to be monitored. Otherwise, cameras are only beneficial after the fact. So what does that mean for your business? Whether you're a medical business, a legal business, a manufacturing business, your human eyes and ears are what matters in this case. Perhaps it's the front desk people. Perhaps it's in your shipping. Someone needs to be paying attention to somebody or something that feels different. And once they become aware of that, the next thing is you have to alert other people and let them know that there's a problem. In the case of the correspondence dinner, the guy burst through and started shooting, so it became readily apparent that there was a problem, but the failure occurred before the guy came through security. He should have been met with, and someone should have approached them and talked to him. Because obviously somebody getting ready to run in is going to give a physical tell. You tense up, right? People coil. It's almost like a cobra where you coil before you go into action. That's what needed to be detected. Now, I'm not blaming these folks here. They have their work cut out for them. And I am really hopeful that President Trump finally learned a lesson that he partly created this situation that we're under. He helped stoke violence and political violence amongst his own supporters. Now it looks like it's been directed against he and his staff or he and his cabinet officials, and it's not fun. So hopefully he will now try to get everybody to take a step back. But we have to understand something. With AI, which has a lot of great benefits, there's also fear of losing jobs. That's why Sam Altman is now getting attacked at his home, because people are fearful. There's a lot of grievance directed towards him because his product, his AI, might actually upend people's lives. And that's where the grievance comes from. It's not red versus blue. It's not liberal versus conservative. It's about the impact that comes from upending of someone's life. I've previously also talked about how financial situations, when they change, particularly when they change for the worse, can upend someone's life, and that can drive someone into workplace violence. So we need to kind of be aware of these types of things. Now, there's another problem with most people's workplace violence prevention that needs to be addressed here. There was no de-escalation that could take place once he burst through security. And by the way, he just burst through security. Yes, they're doing their checks, they're looking at people, they're inspecting bags, whatever. They're doing the typical type things. He just burst right through. That's what can happen. Too many people think de-escalation is the be-all, end-all strategy to avoid physical harm. The reality is most of the time there is no de-escalation. Most of the time these attackers are not telegraphing what they're going to do, and they're certainly not telegraphing it to the intended targets. So we have to be able to understand that violence can occur, and it typically occurs without warning, because if you think about it, when violence happens without warning, it's akin to a sneak attack. The attacker is catching people off their guard. The same thing if you look at the health insurance executive. He was on his way to the conference. The attacker waited for him and stepped out and just started firing when the executive walked past him. He didn't call out to him. He didn't say, hey you, I got to tell you about what you're doing wrong. None of that stuff. He literally just stepped out from the shadows and started firing. So we have to approach things differently. Now I want to bring up one last little component of all of this. When it comes to workplace violence prevention, we need to comply with California law, but you also need for it to be effective so that you can protect your employees. That's how you retain employees. Employees who feel unprotected by their employers are not going to stick around. They're not going to do their best work. They're not even going to care. That's not good for your bottom line. So even if you have to come at this from a little bit of a self-interest in protecting the business that you built, protecting the organization that you built, in managing the government agency that you manage, you need to have a vested interest in everybody else's safety because it affects your bottom line. It affects your effectiveness. And we all want to be effective in our workplace, or we should be doing something different. What I want you to take away from this is I want you to throw out the traditional workplace violence prevention guidelines. And I want you to think about things just from your employees' specific things they do. I want you to talk with your employees. I want you to look at your physical surroundings. I want you to assess those. And I want you to personalize this to a level that says, I have as much information as I can possibly have so that my employees can be as safe as possible. So remember, the fastest way to get this done is to talk to someone who does this day in and day out, who's done this for over a decade, who spent 30 years investigating violence and how it could have been prevented. And go ahead and do your free 15-minute workplace violence risk audit. Let's go through where you're at. Let's look at what your strengths and your weaknesses are and what ways you can do to really nail this.